Today, we're going to change the oil on this diesel Volkswagen Jetta. As you can see, service is due in 100 miles, so we're right on schedule. Now I'm following Volkswagen's recommended service intervals and changing the oil every 10,000 miles. Now I know that sounds like a lot to some people, but here's the thing you have to keep in mind. This vehicle averages miles per hour around 50, so I'm almost all highway driving in this thing. Almost all these miles are highway miles. Secondly, we're using a full synthetic oil that's recommended for Volkswagen vehicles equipped with diesel particulate filters. And we're using a high quality filter. But what about engine oil consumption? Has this engine used any oil? Let's find out. I have not topped it off once in the last 10,000 miles, and let's see what the engine oil level looks like. Clean dipstick. Let's check the level. So we're right about halfway in between the full mark and the add mark, so that's perfect. This engine has used very little, if any, engine oil at all. So for a 10,000 mile interval, I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. It didn't have to add a drop of oil in 10,000 miles, and the oil level is still where it needs to be. We're gonna have to take the splash shield off to get to the drain plug to drain the old oil out. And we're going to need a size 25 Torx bit. Take that off. It really helps if you have it on a little screw gun here. Makes that a lot easier. And because it would be too simple and straightforward to make all the bolts the same size, there's going to be 3 size 30 Torx bolts that you'll need to take out from the back here, and then the shield drops down. Look at this weird looking thing. Looks like an ice cube tray. Wonder if we got a little leak going on here, or why that area is a little bit darker than the other. There we go. Little charge air cooler boot leak in there. Not a big deal. Probably not even gonna worry about it. What do a 7.3 Power Stroke and this Volkswagen Jetta TDI have in common? Both take a 19mm wrench to get the drain plug off. There we go. It's a good sized drain plug. There we go. All right, not too bad. Got a little bit on my fingers. That oil isn't even really that bad. You look at it, I've seen much worse looking diesel engine oil than this. This is actually pretty clean. For 10,000 miles, I'm impressed. That's pretty good. Put the drain plug back in, tighten it up. Now, since we're at the 240,000 mile mark, we're going to go ahead and change the DSG transmission fluid and filter as well. The DSG filter is underneath the battery tray, so I had to take a few things out to get to it, but not too bad. There's the cap. There's the filter down in there. Make sure we replace the little O-ring here. Now, these drain plugs here on the DSG are a little different. You have a 14mm plug here that comes out of the bottom, and initially you're going to get some fluid that comes out, and then it's just going to stop. And that's because there is another 8mm drain plug up in there. It's plastic, so you got to be really careful with this one. This is also the little device that serves as like an overflow tube, however you want to put it, and you use it to measure the fluid when you put it back in. So I'm going to pull this out, and I believe that we're going to get a lot more fluid that comes out. Yeah, you can already see more fluid coming out of there now. But I believe that as we continue to take this out, we're going to get more and more fluid that comes out of here. So I'm going to let that drain. Then I'm going to pull the little plastic plug insert out the rest of the way, and we'll get all the fluid. Yikes. We'll get all the fluid drained out of there, and then we'll refill it. Here's a little plug that comes out of the bottom of the transmission. So you can see it's hollow. Fits an 8mm hex socket. And this is basically used for measuring the fluid. So what we'll do once this finishes draining here, we're going to thread this back into the transmission, and then I have a special funnel over here that threads into the bottom of the DSG. And what this allows me to do is this will allow me to fill the transmission from the bottom. And it's a pain. It sucks, but it is what it is. We'll fill it from the bottom, and theoretically what's going to happen is when the level gets up to the point where it is even with the top of this plug, theoretically that is full. Now I'm going to go just a little bit more, maybe just a couple ounces more, because when I took the drain plug out, a little bit of fluid came out even with this threaded in all the way. There's ways to get it exact, and certain temperatures you have to have it set at. I've never done a DSG before, but I've filled many transmissions up this way, and I've just always filled them up to the top here, start them, let them run, see where the level's at, go a little bit above that, never had a problem. So if any other of you are experienced with these, just let me know in the comments below what you think, but this is what I'm going to try and we'll see what happens. So a couple things here when refilling the DSG transmission through the bottom with this little funnel here and tube that I got off Amazon for like 20 bucks. It worked great, can't complain. But another thing that I did was I measured the fluid that I took out, and this is just approximate, but this is a 2-gallon container of the best known 15W40 diesel oil to man. Makes Rotella look like water. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, this is about halfway full, and so that's about a gallon-ish or so. The fluid that I put in it is right over here. Here's the jug that I filled it up with. This is the Pentacin, I believe it is. Dual clutch transmission fluid. Forums all over the place were recommending this, so I went with it. It's a little bit more expensive, but I've been told it's good stuff. And I put the new filter on there as well. And anyway, what I did was, you got to get this funnel up as high as you possibly can. The higher it is, the more gravity you have working with you to fill the transmission. And what I noticed is if you have any air gaps in the line, it's going to slow it down because it's air. Air's trying to rise, fluid's trying to go down, so you got the two going against each other. Get all the air out and then keep this solid with fluid, and you'll have over a gallon, I think it's like 1.3 US gallons in there, ran through that funnel and into the transmission in no time. So this thing worked perfect. Just make sure you get all the air out of the lines and measure your fluid first. And as always, before we seal it up, I'm going to actually check the level, run it through the gears, make sure the level's good and all that good stuff. And we'll go from there. Here's the fuel filter. Pretty simple. 5 bolts and just a little flathead screwdriver. Wedge it in between here and pry this up. Replace this little rubber O-ring seal that you see right here. You want to look inside here, I've been told, and look for any metal shavings or anything that might be in there, and everything looks great, so looks nice and clean. Here's our new fuel filter right here. I believe that's a Wix. And there's the old fuel filter in there. Not too bad. Old fuel filter, DSG filter, and engine oil filter. Everything's looking pretty good. I've seen much, much worse, that's for sure. So we're going to put the new fuel filter in there, seal this back up, and that'll be our fuel filter. Super easy. Now, something else I've been told you should do is take some clean diesel fuel and fill this little reservoir here to avoid getting air in the fuel system. Now, I'm no Volkswagen expert, but that makes sense that you're filling it up, getting as much air out as possible, so that way you keep air out of the high pressure fuel pump there. So I topped it off with this diesel fuel here, and it's to the point, I think I got it right where I want it to be. Fuel filter's all the way down, and it's to the point here where as I push the top of this down, a little bit's going to spill out of the top. Yep. So that should keep almost, if not all, the air out. And we're going to replace the cabin air filter while we're at it, and looks like that was a good idea. This thing's just a little bit clogged. Oh wow. I bet you we'll get some better airflow after we put a new one of these in. It's packed full of stuff. Look at that. Good deal. Well, Got the new filter right over there, another Wix filter, we'll throw that in. All right, new filter's ready to go in. Here it is. Cool, all right. I'm also gonna throw a new engine air filter in it. Probably didn't really need to replace this, but while I've got it all apart, I'm just gonna do it. You know, I already bought the filter, just gonna do it and be done with it. Our washer fluid's topped off. You may wonder why it's orange, and that's because this video is not sponsored by, but it's something that I absolutely love, Rain-X washer fluid. There's no need to go over the windshield with your rags or anything. If you want to make it even better, put Rain-X wiper blades on it, but this car already had some really nice Bosch blades that work great, so I haven't bothered with that. But Rain-X washer fluid, spray it on there several times, and before you know it, it'll be just as good, if not better, than when you wipe it on there with the rags. So that's what I use there. Our coolant level is good. Fuel filter's done, oil filter's changed, transmission fluid filter's changed. We got a new air filter, a new cabin air filter, filled up the engine oil, filled up the transmission. All we are waiting on right now, and my wife went to get the parts, God bless her, I love her. This is the engine oil cooler adapter, I guess you could call it. Now, initially when you look underneath the car, and it looks like somebody might have mistaken this a time or two, this looks like the engine oil filter cap. As you can see, looks very familiar. Looks similar there, doesn't it? This does not have the engine oil filter on it. Top one does, bottom one does not. This is just a plate that holds the oil cooler to the engine. So make sure if you're doing your oil change on this thing yourself that you don't take this out. The reason I took it out, I'll show you when she gets back with the old parts, is the seals were getting brittle and cracking, and there was a little bit of oil starting to leak under there. So while I had it off, while I had it apart, gaskets were only like 20 bucks, and that's not even any discounted rate or anything, but still, it was easy to do, so I thought I'm just going to do it while I'm at it. Once she gets back with that, all this will go back together, and we'll be done. Now, I know some people are probably going to be asking me, well, what about the timing belt? When's the dual mass flywheel going to be done? Guys, as soon as I can get my hands on that flywheel, I'm going to do it. I just can't find one. Dealer says they're on back order. Dealer's price is like 3 times the cost of Rock Auto, so I'm not going to buy it from there if I don't have to. Yes, it knocks around at idle, but as soon as I put it in gear, the noise goes away and it's smooth, so I just try to keep it in gear whenever possible or shut the car off. I have ordered that part from Rock Auto 3 times now, and all 3 times they've emailed me back saying, oh, sorry, our inventory was off, and they've canceled my order. So I cannot get that flywheel. I'm trying. As soon as I get it, we're going to pull the transmission out here and put that flywheel in, and I'm going to probably do the timing belt at the same time. The owner's manual says the timing belt interval on these is 130,000 miles, and I have no problem with that, especially with the amount of highway driving that I do, so I'm not worried about it. They put these little plastic covers here so you can easily inspect it. I just check it every time I change the oil, and it looks fine, so I'm not worried about it. So don't worry, that work is coming. It's just in the future whenever I can get my hands on one of those stupid dual mass flywheels. Now that's a thing of beauty right there. If you find a woman who drives across town to go get you some parts to finish your job, put a ring on that finger. Alright, so on the oil cooler, here are the old seals. I noticed there was some leaking, and sure enough, this seal here in particular has just gotten brittle and is cracking and not sealing like it used to. See how that just breaks apart? Kind of like the oil cooler on the 7.3s. So there's that one. This one was better, but still had a few little cracks starting on there, so I thought, well, I'll just replace them both while I'm at it. So here's our new one, and we also have an updated design as well for that other seal, the one that was breaking apart. Apparently, this is the way that the new part looks, so let's see how this goes. We'll put these seals on and make sure that everything seals up properly. So that seal here is pretty easy, straightforward. The one up here is a little bit more challenging. And as you can see, I've got it in place, I believe. And these little notches here, there's one on either side, they just kind of hook onto those little barbs. that's on that side of the oil filter or the oil cooler surface, and that kind of helps hold the rubber seal in place. So now all that's left to do is reposition it, thread it back in, tighten it up. Let's keep our fingers crossed for no oil leaks. Now I wonder how many times, like a new tech or someone new to Volkswagen or a quick lube place mistakes this for the oil filter. I mean, look at that. That just looks exactly like an engine oil filter cap if you don't see it from the top. I can't help but wonder if this happens more often than not. Okay, I've still got the little funnel and tube on there, so that way I'm losing as little fluid as possible until I measure it. Leaving all this stuff off to make sure I don't have any leaks. Oil cooler's back up there secured. So we should be good to start it. Let's see if I got everything right or if I messed up anything. Except for that knockin' dual mass flywheel. Oh, you guys hear that flywheel knocking? All right, well, let's run it through the gears, get all that fluid through the transmission, we'll let the excess out, and take it from there. Now, of course, Volkswagens like to set lots of warning lights and codes whenever you disconnect the battery. Not to mention, put the transmission in gear and let the front wheels rotate without the rear ones rotating. So let's see if we can drive this thing and get some of these warning lights to go out. Didn't even reach the end of my street and all the lights went out. So that's great. Maybe I'll have some history codes to clear with the scan tool later on, but no warning lights, and she's running great. Drives really nice. I can tell the transmission shifts a little bit smoother. I mean, maybe it's all in my head, but it sure seems like the transmission just shifts a little bit smoother now, which I think is kind of cool. If anything, it just tells me I did the job right. So there we go. We're ready for another 10,000 miles before the next oil change, and in 20,000, hopefully I can get my hands on a flywheel. We'll knock out the flywheel and the timing belt, do a few other little maintenance items, another fuel filter, things like that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and I'll see you next time.